Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Understories with me, your host, Lindsay Fowler. This week, we're speaking to Heather Crank, a motion and graphic designer based in my home state of Oregon, USA. I love this conversation with Heather so much. It was brilliant discussing her work in generative AI and how she integrates language and visual art. There's so much fear around AI taking creative jobs, and we talk about the challenges and opportunities that AI presents. We discuss why embracing AI as a tool is crucial and why it's so important to stay ahead of technological changes, especially as creatives. As an antidote to the digital, for Heather, staying connected with her communities to navigate the evolving landscape is the key to moving beyond the nervousness of what AI represents, and instead sees it as a way of galvanizing the creative force to empower creatives into the future. Before we get started, if you like this podcast, please give us a rating or review wherever you're listening or watching, tell a friend, and of course, don't forget to subscribe so that you are notified about future episodes which come out every other Tuesday. And now, over to Heather. So, Heather Crank, welcome to Understories. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast. It's really great to have you. I always ask people when we're starting out to tell us a little bit about what you do and who you are, and we can get started from there.
Thank you so much. It's a huge honor to be here with you.
Pleasure.
I'm a motion designer, graphic designer, art director. I also work a lot in generative AI. I design in AI and I teach workshops too. I recently started working with a group called the Developing Life. And as we were discussing earlier, we've started a few podcasts. And I used to work programming for the Bend Design Conference. So I've done a lot of conference programming, exhibit design.
Wow.
Yeah, I've done a lot of different things.
You've done a lot of different things. Yeah. And I should also just point out that Heather is a fellow Oregonian, as I am. So, but we didn't meet each other in Oregon. We don't know each other from Oregon. We met each other through a mutual friend. So it's, but it's really cool to have someone from my home state on the podcast. You're like, hey, Oregon. So tell us a little bit more about it. So, I mean, I think when we first spoke about your work, I mean, I think the thing about AI was one of the things that really kind of inspired me to want you to come on, because I think we talked about it before. So many people are very scared of AI. They're afraid of, the taking of the jobs and all that stuff, which I think is now sort of starting to kind of quiet down a little bit. I think people are starting to understand. I don't know if it's just me, but they're trying to understand now that, like, maybe it's actually more of a tool and all that. So can you talk about, because I think your process actually led you to working with AI in a really interesting way. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, sure. So many years ago, I used to love to write. And, I think every artist goes through this phase where they think they're going to be some kind of writer or poet or whatever. But I did study it. I did study postmodern literature. I did go pretty deep into writing during my undergraduate degree. And when I discovered generative AI, which is text to image, it was really easy and natural because I've spent the majority of my life honing in on the visual part of my skill. And I forgot about the writing part. And so for me, it's the perfect connection between two things I really, really love to do. And it's kind of nice to have the writing come back. I didn't think that would happen. So it's this perfect marriage of two things I really like. And as far as jobs, people are starting to integrate it more and be less afraid of it. But I also am seeing massive layoffs right now, especially in the motion design industry.
Right.
The video and motion production are being heavily disrupted right now. And I think this is just the beginning of a transition into people understanding how they need to spend money or how they want to spend money with the new technology. So people are less afraid, but lots of people are being laid off. And it's just a weird time.
And that, I mean, what is your advice then for the people that are in that position? Because I mean, I don't know about you, but it's like in my mind, I always think about the skill set, right? It's like being able to
Mm-hmm.
use the tool, and actually that becomes
Mm-hmm.
the thing that becomes attractive to potential hiring or people who are hiring and things like that. But like, what do you think about that?
So I think that definitely get involved with understanding what AI is and what AI does,
Mm,
especially if you are a creative person, generative AI. Um,
mm,
I think that if you're a motion designer, you've worked in production, um, pay attention to the changes that are happening and make sure you're staying on top of it. I think that
mm,
those industries are going to radically change. So the best thing that you can do right now is just really talk to people and really
mm,
stay in communication with your employers or people
mm,
you want to work with. I was speaking to a head of the company the other day, and he asked, "So how was your first quarter?" I'm like, "Not great." It was really strange. And he said
mm,
it's happening everywhere, that
yeah.
people aren't sure how to structure their businesses to integrate what's coming. So if you just stay in front of people, keep talking to them,
Mm,
express your interest in moving forward with the technology is your best
mm.
bet. I think it's going to be a little messy for a little bit.
And how have you, I mean, you said the first quarter was a bit tricky. Like,
Yeah.
how have you adapted to it now that you're understanding what's going on? Because I mean, as you know, this podcast is about the creative business, right? It's like how do you balance the creative part with the business part? But it
Yeah.
sounds for you, it's actually upended your almost your entire model in a sense because
Yeah.
you can't do things the way that you used to do them.
Yeah. That's exactly what happened.
Mm,
About 2 years ago, I kind of saw this coming. And so
mm,
I've been trying to get on top of it and be ready to change as the industry changes. But because it's so turbulent right now, it feels like
mm.
I just haven't been able to get where I needed to be because it's not there. There's nowhere to go.
Right,
It doesn't
right.
exist yet. So what I've been doing is kind of going backwards into my history and my roots and what I've done in the past, like more graphic design, working with my hands. Those things aren't going away. I'm also fortunate right now to be married to someone who doesn't work on a computer and he makes things. So I've been putting a
Oh,
lot of energy into his business to help balance it out while I'm
yeah,
struggling a little bit.
yeah,
Um, and then, of course, I started the Developing Life community. My friend Devron is the one who's instigated that. And I'm banding with other communities. We're
yeah,
stronger in numbers and in groups.
yeah.
And that's been my lifeline. So that's one thing you can do is find people in your community, start talking about how
Mm,
you can reinvent, what it looks like, how you can stay relevant. Um, and for myself, I'm just continuing to dive deep into AI. I post every day morning meditations. I show you my process, what's going on.
yeah,
I teach workshops. And that's kind
yeah.
of been it.
It's amazing. Absolutely amazing. I mean, it's upended everything, hasn't it? It's
Hmm.
just so a part of that ends up being requires a bit of patience, I think, probably, right? Because you have to kind of sit and wait for kind of the next, I don't know, beacon to kind of show you the right direction to go in that sense. But the technology changes so quickly
Hmm.
and all that. It's very dynamic. Um, can we go back a little bit? So how did you end
Yeah.
up starting your studio? I mean
Oh, yeah.
your practice. How did you end up getting into this?
So, it's been about 8 years ago, I left my corporate job. I was living in Denver, Colorado. I worked for a company called Craftsy, which was an online educational startup.
Yeah.
Um, I was the senior motion designer there. And originally when I started, I helped them build their motion design team. There, when
Mm,
I started, I think I was like hire 22, and when I left, the
mm.
company was over 300 people.
Wow.
and they IPO'd, and I can't remember the company. I think it was a big company like Universal, or a big
Mm.
entertainment company bought them.
Yeah.
And of
Wow.
course, they did the usual let everybody who worked there go, or the majority of them, and brought their
Oh
own
no.
team.
Oh no.
So I figured that was a really good time to think
Mm.
about what I wanted. And I just wanted to create more of what my husband and I call the integrated life, which is
Mm.
more about community and
Mm.
nature and creativity. And we just had this
Mm.
long-standing dream. So we literally packed everything up, moved, came back to Oregon, and
Yeah.
started Cromonti. And initially, it was our kind of blended experiences.
Yeah.
So we did a lot of exhibit design, where I would design it, he would build it, I would create the motion.
Yeah.
And yeah, so we've been doing that for a while, and it's had a lot of different incarnations. And I've made a lot of mistakes. Yeah, but it's been incredible. Like, just to
Mm.
have what's the word? To have the power in my own hands to make my own choices, to make my own mistakes, and
Mm.
to direct kind of where my life is going more. I really like
Yeah.
that.
So you kind of been ruined a bit. You could never go back now to any
I
sort of.
know, it's so bad. I'm like, I don't want to do it.
I know. But you don't have to. You're the master of your own destiny.
Yes,
I mean,
yes,
but it is true. It is. It's all of a sudden such a different thing when you run your own gig, right? Because
yes,
you it's the hardest thing in the world, right? I don't think
it is.
anyone who knows. I always feel like if people really knew how hard it would be to do your own thing, no one
Yeah,
would ever do it. But you're naive
agreed.
and stupid enough when you start out
Yes,
being like, "Yeah, it's gonna be great, and I'm gonna do it better than the previous before, and I'll be better."
it's true. It's true. Oh my God, it's so true. Yes. Mm-hmm. Not easy.
Not easy. But okay, so what was like you've been going for 8 years now.
Mm-hmm.
What's been some of the most surprising things that have happened aside from the
Mm.
the AI side of things? That's quite a surprise. But
Yeah.
like aside from that, what else has been remarkable for you in that way?
I think what was really amazing was when we were working with the Bend Design Conference,
Mm.
I would ask people who I would consider unreachable for me, or, like rock star people in my field. I would ask
Yeah.
them to come and be part of it, or just um, engage them. And they never said no. I think in
Ah,
6 years, I think I only had one no. And I learned a
wow.
lot about, um, there's something really wonderful about community and curiosity, and being authentic and showing up, and how
Mm.
powerful that really is. And
Mm.
excuse me, um, I wasn't aware that I had that kind of ability. Like, it was something new to me,
Oh, what an
you
amazing
know?
answer. That's so exciting. But before we jumped on the recording, you were talking about how you're an introvert. I mean, that must have been
I
a
am.
big challenge to
It
get
was
through to.
horrible. So this is the thing. People don't believe I'm an introvert, because when I'm out in public, or if
Mm.
there's something I really want,
Mm.
I'm able to sort of put that to the side temporarily. And
Mm.
the desire to interact or achieve something kind of takes over.
Mm.
But once I'm done with that, I have what I call my introvert hangover that goes on for several days.
I
I'm
understand. Go
definitely
like
an
put yourself in a
introvert.
dark room. Yeah.
Yes. And then reevaluate every single thing I did. And, it's just a
Yeah, yeah.
horrible thing. It's a horrible thing.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. But it wasn't easy. But I learned so much about myself, and about um, how important the spotlight is, even if you're someone who doesn't like it.
Yeah.
It can do a lot for you.
Yeah. But it's that thing about I think we're so afraid to show up in the spotlight because that thing about being authentic.
Yeah.
is really scary, right? It's
Yeah.
really uncomfortable for so many people. I mean, myself included. Like,
Mm-hmm.
you know, you want to be out there, you want to be building the business, you want to be building
Yes.
relationships and building community, but
Yeah.
that requires you, as you say, to show up authentically. But then you're
Mm-hmm.
like, oh God, I don't want to be, please don't judge me. How did you get
Yes.
through that? How did you just sheer force of will?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. A lot
Mm,
of just if I want to get from point A to point B, I was really clear about what that was going to require and what that took.
mm,
And I just made a total idiot of myself repeatedly.
I doubt it.
Sometimes very, oh no, I did publicly too.
Okay.
And, you know, the thing is that most people want you to succeed. And if
Yeah.
you make a mistake, people are pretty forgiving. It's just
Yeah.
more how we beat ourselves up. I'm
Yeah.
terrible. Um, yeah, so it was more about my own wounded ego than what other people thought of me anyway.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yeah.
I get that. I get that.
Mhm.
Yeah, I do think you're right. I think I always kind of think about it from this perspective is in like if someone did something on stage and I was in the audience and they
Mhm.
did something silly or they messed up or whatever,
Yeah.
I wouldn't even it wouldn't I wouldn't even judge them. It'd be like, "Oh yeah, like it's fine. Like no problem."
Yeah.
But we don't give ourselves that kind of level of space or grace
Mm-mm.
when we're doing these things. We're like, "No, you have to be perfect. You have to be amazing. There's no room for mistakes." And yeah, I think it must be I know it is a challenge actually to kind of be able to put yourself into that third person and kind of be like
Mhm.
give yourself it's okay. It's all
Yeah.
right. Be willing to make a fool of yourself because,
Yeah.
you're getting in the ring. That's as they say. Like if you're not willing to get in the ring, what are we doing? You're just standing on the sidelines. So
Right. It's
yeah.
true. And also, people when you're out in public like that, people are going on the ride with you. Like they're
Yeah.
cheering for you. They want to
Yeah.
see you succeed. It's like
Yeah.
it's that amazing. It's why we watch so many movies. We want to see the person go
Yeah.
through their struggle and overcome. Like
Yeah.
they're cheering for you. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It's so true. It's so true. So, oh, there's so many questions I have for you because I think like the I mean, I mean, the audience, of course, I think would be interested in the AI side of things. But
Mm,
can we talk a little bit about the practice of it? So, you come from a writing background, and
yeah.
um, words have always been a tool for you for
Mhm.
expression. And then you
Mhm.
went down the visual path because that seemed like
Mhm.
the natural progression for that.
Mhm.
But
Mhm.
now you've integrated these two, and
Mhm.
it'd be really good to talk a bit more about this for you in terms of how it's affected your art practice, how it's
Mhm.
affected your creativity.
Mhm.
Because I think sometimes I mean, I use large language models or whatever,
Mhm. Mhm.
ChatGPT to help me with different things.
Mhm.
But
Mhm.
I'm not like creating visual content. I'm not doing it, and so I'm always really interested in talking to people who are doing this stuff because it's like it's an extension in some way of how you work, right? You use
Mhm.
it as a
Mhm.
tool.
Mhm.
Can you talk a bit more about that?
Yeah, it's interesting. There's a big misconception that you just type things and create like amazing work. You can
Right.
type things and generate work, but it's not
It's not.
necessarily amazing,
Yeah. Yeah, you
you
can
know?
tell.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And as time goes on, like what was interesting because it was more of a shiny new object is starting to
Mm.
look a little dated now.
Isn't that
And
funny?
yeah, I noticed it. I'm like, "Ooh, yeah, I remember when that was cool." Like it's not now. And
Yeah.
I think with anything that involves a lot of technology, it tends to look pretty dated pretty quickly if you rely on the technology itself. Like if there's a
Mm.
new filter in Photoshop or new technique in Illustrator and you rely on that technique in a year, it's not going to look so great. So
Mm.
it's the same method I've always used where it's about how you think about your concept development. When I'm working with AI, it's more like being an art director where I'm um, just like if I'm working with a graphic designer, a motion designer, I need to describe exactly what I want to create in detail. if I
Mm.
told my designer, I want you to make a house, I could get a lot of weird stuff or random
Yeah.
stuff. So the more specificity I can use in the language to communicate what I want, the better the image. So the
Mm.
really good generative AI people are usually visual thinkers who know how to articulate. That's going to be the skill going forward, is how do you articulate the same level of concept and technique that you would as a designer in AI. That's going to separate, the
Wow.
masters from the novice.
Yeah.
And
Wow.
I have one more thought about this. If you're a kinesthetic person and you like to do things with your hands, you are going to hate this. It is going to be
That's me.
torture to you. You're going to hate it. You're going to hate it. And
Yeah.
I've been thinking a lot about this, about my friends
Mm.
who like to create with their hands, or even, like if you create with a tablet or a pen or you draw,
Mm.
how are you going to be able to adapt if things really shift into all language? Because it takes that
Mm.
kinesthetic learning and now we're in visual, you know.
Oh, that's so interesting. I mean, I
Yeah.
guess I think about it like I think my biggest challenge is like, I mean, if I was, I mean, I'm not a visual artist in any sense.
Yeah.
I mean, I can
Yeah.
watercolor paint like
Yeah.
my daughter, but it's like,
Right.
but I think like to be able to be so articulate on like what you want, I think
Mm-hmm.
is what I'm interested in. That is like, if you think from an artist's point of view, sometimes they might not know what they want. They need to do the
Mm-hmm.
experimentation of putting
Mm-hmm.
the paint on the canvas or the
Yes.
whatever.
Yeah, for sure.
But that's a very like once the brushstroke has been made, it's there, right?
Yeah.
But with this kind of a way of working, it's almost like you can reverse that brushstroke if you want, because you can say, "Oh no, I
Mm-hmm.
didn't actually like what that produced."
Mm-hmm.
I mean, does that change the definition of what the randomness of art? I mean, how do you? I mean, you're like, no, definitely not.
No, no. Control Z, Command Z, same thing. I used to have dreams where I was doing that.
Yeah.
No, 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 no. I don't think it changes it. What I think is going to change is, um, it's the same reason why a lot of designers, when they moved into being an art director, creative director, hated it, because it took them
Mm.
out of the making of the thing and more into
Yes.
directing.
Yes.
It's going to be like that, but much more prevalent. So I don't
Mm.
know what the alternative to this is going to be, because a lot of people are just not going to like this. They're going to
No.
like what it does for them. They're going to like, businesses will like the speed at which they can produce work. Small studios will be able to compete with big studios. That's already
Yeah.
happening.
Yeah.
So I think that, I don't know. I think we're in a transition phase and I don't know what it's going to look like. And I know my kinesthetic friends are not happy with what's happening. And if you're like me, you're in a good spot. If you like to direct, if you like to write, if you
Yeah.
like to use language visually.
Mm.
But if you're a conceptual thinker too, you can also adapt to this. But I just think there's going to be a large group of people that will feel unhappy.
Mm.
Yeah. And my guess is, if that happens, that somebody will need to respond to that and have to develop something to complement people
Mm.
who, because there's a lot of people who are more
Yeah.
kinesthetic, who want to actually create with their hands.
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing, right? It's the technology is so new. So it's even the offshoots of it,
Mm-hmm.
what is the right word? Like the
Yeah.
ancillary,
Yeah. Yeah.
softwares
Yeah.
that will come off the back of it. We don't even know what those are yet. It's an interesting idea, because I was thinking when you're talking, it's like I love writing, but I sometimes
Mm-hmm.
write. Well, most of the time when I'm doing any writing, I use writing to work out what I think, because
Right.
I have the ideas in
Exactly.
my head, so I can do that.
Mm-hmm.
but I think it would but I also like working with my hands. So
Mm-hmm.
it's for me, I'm thinking about the idea of actually giving some sort of visual direction. I'd almost have to write down exactly what I think first. That bit would take me the longest, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And then you'd feed
Mm-hmm.
that.
Mm-hmm.
How is it for you? Do you end up doing the writing quite quickly because it's a natural thing for you, and then
Mm-hmm.
moving quickly into the adjustments?
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Yeah, I have an unfair advantage. I write very quickly. Yeah.
You write quickly. Wow.
Mm-hmm.
So, when you're doing this kind of work, so you write quickly about what you want,
Mm-hmm.
and Midjourney or whatever it is produces the image that you're looking
Mm-hmm.
at.
Mm-hmm.
Then what?
Once I get a concept down that I usually will use either Midjourney or Firefly, depending on the copyright
Yeah.
um, preference of the client. I use it to generate comps and just sort of get ideas out really quickly. And then I'll go into Photoshop or Illustrator and work through the actual
Mm,
concept because I want it to be perfect. And usually Midjourney will get me close, but it doesn't get me all the way there. Just like
mm,
if I were generating comps for a storyboard, the comps are guides. So I
When you
use
say
it
comps,
to,
what do you mean? What do you mean by
oh,
comps?
comps. So if a client says, I want you to create 3 different directions of this
Mm.
concept, I would create comps of those directions. So they're sort
Oh,
of
compositions,
reference.
basically.
Yeah, like
Yeah. Okay.
references, visual references.
Oh,
Like we could go this way, we could go this way, we could go this way. And
right.
then usually they'll kind of lean towards one way or they'll hate them all and I'll I'll start again.
Yeah.
Um, and then I will need to go into the, Adobe software to actually create the final images because they have to be pixel perfect. Like they need to be
Mm.
flawless. And usually the concepts that I have, they're close, but they're not exactly what I want.
Sure. Sure. I think when we spoke initially, we were talking about this is, the idea that AI could replicate like a human creative act
Right.
is, it's not, it can't really, because I mean, each person comes into it with such a diverse range of experiences and
Mm-hmm.
ideas.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
To me, it almost seems like it's forcing us to be more creative. It will force us to double down on what we actually want to create, because the getting there isn't as hard. Do you see what I mean? So it almost like
Yeah.
the playing field goes higher in that sense.
I've heard some people speak to that and say they feel like this is going to be a creative renaissance for people.
Mm,
Um, because of that very concept, that because
mm,
it will require us to, if what was more challenging has now become easy, then
mm,
in order to raise the bar, the ideas and the concepts have to be a lot more developed. They have to be a lot more interesting or um, specific to an individual person, like something generic. For
mm.
example, like if I see any more robots, oh my God, like it's too many robots. I just am not interested anymore. It's been too much of the same. So
Yeah,
how do you stand apart? How do you differentiate yourself now that
yeah,
everything, that the baseline is no longer, the baseline now is your, what would have been considered a good piece of work before.
right, right.
Yeah.
But so I mean, I can imagine people listening to that and going, crap. Like,
Yeah.
it's like what, but I mean, because, I work with a lot of architects and designers,
Yeah.
and there's a lot of
Yep.
talk about how they've come into this industry as like generalists, right? That idea to
Yeah.
be a generalist
Right.
designer. And
Yep.
there's talk now so much more. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
I think the industry lags a bit, to be honest, in a lot of ways, but
Sure.
there's a lot of talk about architects specifically doubling down on what they want to be known for, like being really, really hyper
That's
specific.
right. That's right.
And
Yeah.
this is part of it, isn't it? It's like actually
Yeah.
what makes you unique, what the story that you want to tell is actually the bit that you need to, I don't
You
know,
need to
mine
focus on.
for.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Definitely. And people who are in production generalists, they are in trouble. But
Yeah.
AI, of all the jobs that AI will take, it's going to take production. It's going to take
Mm.
anything that can be automated will be automated, and
Yeah.
quickly. I'd say 2
Yeah.
years max. So if you
Yeah.
are in production, get out. Get out. Find a new
Find a new
niche.
find a new niche. I mean, when you say production, do you mean like the technical like generation of things? So
Yeah,
production of film, production of drawings,
yeah,
production of
yep.
all that kind of stuff. Yeah.
Everything,
Yeah.
everything. Like people who are production artists in Photoshop, if you work in a industry where you're working for film and you're doing visual effects production,
Yeah.
there's so much production across the board in so many fields. That is the area that is the most in trouble. Yeah,
Wow.
yeah.
I mean, it's incredible to think about.
It's
But then what do
happening
people
really
do?
fast. This is the question. This is a million
Uh,
dollar question. What do you
yeah.
Okay, so here would be my thoughts. What do you want? What do you want to
Mm.
do? If
Mm.
you could do anything, now is the time to think about, was there a dream that you left on the table when you first started your career? Is
Mm.
there something you wanted to try but were hesitating to try? Now is the time to do that,
Mm.
because the level of disruption is going to be so intense, and it's starting right now.
Mm.
We're just moving into what I call the creative transition. um, think about that, because
Mm.
as someone has always, my mom used to always say to me, one door, if one door closes, another door opens. And as
Yeah.
I'm personally trying not to panic because I see part of my career path is dissolving,
Mm.
what else can I do? I'm not just limited to this little slice of my personality or talent. I have a lot of things that maybe I was
Mm.
afraid to try, like stepping into the spotlight. Or
Mm.
are there other facets of my personality or my skill that can be used in different ways and I might like more, but I just never had the time or energy to explore it? So it's heartbreaking. And I know there's a lot of anger around this as well. And there are a lot of people who, I personally have been attacked quite a bit for
Yeah, you're
using AI.
saying. Yeah,
Yeah.
you're saying. Yeah.
Yeah. A lot of people will say, "Oh, you just type things in and you get an image." And there is a lot of skill involved.
Mm. Mm.
There is a lot of skill involved, but it's a different kind of skill. So it's easy to think, "Oh, you're just cheating at somebody else's work. You're not an artist. You're not a designer. You don't know what you're doing." And um, there's a lot of trolling because people are
Yeah.
afraid. They're really
Yeah.
afraid,
Yeah.
which I understand.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, yeah, it's really understandable, but obviously it's not done with much emotional intelligence. It's just like you're acting out.
Well,
But
I don't know. Sometimes some people are really afraid. It's hard to have a lot of EQ.
it's
Like,
true. It's
I don't know.
true. It's true. What is it like? If you, I don't know if you ever heard of spiral dynamics. And you might have done.
No.
Have you heard about this?
What's that?
There's, it's, it's this. I can't remember the name of the guy. I'm not going to say it because I will probably butcher it. But basically, it's this idea that human knowledge has gone through different like spirals of knowledge, and it's almost like at the very root of it is, I mean, I guess it's like I think we started out, thinking that the sun was God, and then we moved into like
Right.
kings, and then we moved into like you move up the chain, and but as you get to a certain point, it's like you want like your basic needs met, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so when you're faced with upheaval or disruption,
Mm-hmm.
we
Mm-hmm.
all we revert back down to this version of ourselves, which is
Mm.
caveman, fight or
Yeah.
flight, all that kind
Mm-hmm.
of stuff.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I'm like really, really, what is his name? Ken, can't remember his name, but there's a way of like being aware if like by being aware of it, that when you're in that position, you're like, it's just like it's like when the pandemic happened, everyone kind of doubled down on what was like
Oh,
on self-protection, right? That's why we all
right.
ran out of toilet paper, is because everyone like freaked out and bought too much toilet paper. It's exactly the same version of this, right? But
Yeah,
then,
right.
it's like it took some time for everyone to kind of develop the EQ to be like, okay, maybe there's enough for everyone and we don't need to act in scarcity and all this stuff. But
Mm-hmm.
I
Mm-hmm.
mean, yeah, I mean, it's scary. And I think that, when people are worried about stuff they want to just act out. They want to find someone to blame as well because they feel so
Right.
out of control, right?
Sure. Of course.
There was something you said earlier about, about going into what makes you unique, actually doubling
Mm-hmm.
down a little bit more on what makes you special.
Mm-hmm.
How does that work from a business point of view? How do you see that working from a livelihood point of view?
I feel like we've kind of been in that trend for a while with businesses and brands starting to be um, a little bit more rebellious or authentic to whatever their
Mm,
mission is. Um,
mm,
and it's actually really great timing for that because that's going to become more and more of a thing.
mm,
The brand, as a um,
mm,
movement, basically, or creating their own sort of personality that they follow and adhere to.
mm,
Consumers, I think, want authentic brands. If they feel like their brand is not being authentic to whatever they stand for,
mm,
I think a lot of consumers don't like it and they feel like they're being deceived. So
mm,
I do feel like that's going to become more and more and more of a trend for
mm.
sure.
But it feels, I mean, whenever I've gone into like the kind of mission purpose stuff sometimes with my clients, it's like
Right.
sometimes they're like, they kind of think of it as like this a bit cheese ball. It's a little
Yeah.
bit too like, you know, Pollyannish. Be like, this is what, we're not. One person once said to me that they were kind of cynical about it. And because,
Good.
we're a branding agency, we're not really trying to save the world. We're just making pretty packaging. And I was like, that's okay. Like that could be
That's
why you're
okay.
there. You have to be
Mm-hmm.
clear on why you're there. If you're there is to
Yes.
like make your, like to make great packaging because so then your clients can have great lives. And so because they could sell more product. Like that's a
Right.
worthy purpose. It doesn't have to
Right.
be like, oh, we're gonna save the whales or
Oh
which is
no.
great too, but it can be on a
Yeah.
smaller scale, right?
Yeah. I mean, authenticity doesn't mean that you're pretending to be like if you are somebody who
Mm,
makes pretty packaging and that's what makes you authentic and
yeah.
that's what your drive is, there's nothing wrong. That's authenticity, right? But if you
Yeah.
say you make pretty packaging, but you're actually not making the packaging and you say that you did and you shipped it off to China, consumers are not going to like that, right?
Yeah.
So it's sort of like being true to the standards that you create for yourself and being
Mm,
authentic and true to whatever that is. It doesn't have to be some activist save
yeah.
the whales kind of. It doesn't have to be
Yeah.
that. It can be
Yeah.
whatever you want it to be, but it has to
Yeah.
be 100% whatever that thing is, and it has to be 100% whatever you set up. And that
Mm,
translates to people too. Like not
mm,
everybody has the same personality. I have mine. um I have a lot
yeah.
of designer friends who are very, very different. We like different things. We
Yeah.
gravitate towards different things. And thank
Mm,
God, because it would
yeah.
be really boring
Yeah.
otherwise. And
Yeah.
I don't want to do certain things. And I'm really grateful for people who want to do things that are more math oriented. God bless you. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you for being able to do the spreadsheets. I'm just
Oh my
happy not
God.
having to.
Thank you. Yes. Yeah. But that's a thing, that there's this. I just want people to not feel like there's not a place for them in the world because
Mm,
they're not like aligned with uh, the things that big companies like Patagonia or Oatly are doing.
yeah.
You can be aligned with whatever it is that makes you,
Yeah.
happy.
Yeah. Because ultimately, the thinking on that goes on from that is that if you're doing something that is aligned with what you believe in and it makes you happy to do, most of the time, I would say 99% of the time, it's generative and means
Yeah.
that actually it's going to make the world better in its own, even in its own microcosm. It doesn't have to be done at a huge scale. And the thing is, I
No.
think people forget is that if everyone's doing that, it unquestionably moves the dial in a better direction, right?
Yeah, right. Yes.
So
Like,
it makes it more tangible
yes.
suddenly.
Yes. Like my accountant loves her job. She loves it. It makes her so happy. Like,
Yeah.
she is joyful when she's
Yeah.
doing that. And all
Yeah.
I can think is, thank God you're here, because I would die if that was my job, right? But that's
Yeah.
what that's the beauty of authenticity. It really is.
Yeah.
Whatever it
Yeah.
is, if you show up to something because you want to be there doing that thing, makes a
Yeah.
huge difference. Huge.
Yeah. Do you think it's also contagious? Do you think that when you, like, for you, like showing up in this position of like doing community building,
Hmm.
have you seen that sort of enthusiasm for it trickle out to the people that you're building the community with, that they seem to have a bit
Oh,
more enthusiasm for their thing?
yeah. Yeah. You bring the energy to it, like
Yeah.
I always noticed when we would have speakers who would bring a lot of energy because they really had something to say. And
Mm.
the audience would respond, and there would be this
Mm.
dialogue that would begin to happen instead of being there and just giving your talk and speaking. When that dialogue starts to occur, when you bring your whole self into something and then
Mm.
engage with other people, that's where that magic happens. Whatever it
Mm.
is, whether you're
Yeah.
speaking to an audience one-on-one with somebody, it's more about the contagious part is about showing up authentically, completely
Mm.
present as yourself, and having that back and forth, inviting
Yeah.
somebody in to the conversation. That's the
Mm.
special part.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I agree.
Of
Always.
course, of course.
Of course.
Yeah.
Um, so, I always like to, because I always say this, and I'm probably repeating myself on every single pod I do now, but because as I said before, this is always like, I'm the bit that I sit in is I'm really interested in that balance between being a creative person and actually having your own business, and actually that
Right.
tension, which I don't like the word tension, because I don't think that they need to work. They're not antagonists. They're not antagonizing each other. They're buddies. They should work together, because
Right.
especially if you run your own thing, like,
Right.
you have to have that commercial vibe. For you, what's been like, how do you balance that creative side with the business?
Mhm. So working with a client is a very different experience than just doing my
Mm.
art.
Yeah.
It's like really different. Um, so the way I balance it is, um, when I'm working with a client, the focus is on the client more than on me specifically.
Yeah.
The difference is doing work for
Yeah.
somebody else where there's a very specific predetermined outcome, um,
Mm.
and their rules, and how can I put this? My job is to give them the best of me with whatever filter we're working through. If
Mm.
I'm working for myself, no filter, it's great.
Yeah.
I could do my
Yeah.
own thing. I need to have a lot of time, um, where I do things for myself in order to show up for my clients 100%.
Mm.
The
Can you say more
reason
about
is,
that?
yeah,
Yeah. Go ahead, please.
the
Yeah.
the reason is it takes a lot of my energy to show up for other people. So if I'm
Mm.
not taking that time to show up for myself, whether it's um, creating artistically, going out in nature, making sure I exercise, for
Mm.
me, meditation, the things that feed me are
Mm.
super important because I'm giving constantly. And it's a
Yeah.
lot of energy that I'm putting out for
Yeah.
other people. And it's
Yeah.
really easy to burn out. I've been through that a
Yeah.
couple times, and I've learned my lesson very well that the giving part has to be balanced between what is going out and then what is coming back in.
Mm.
If it's just like going out, going out, going out, and I'm up here 12 hours a day and I'm working nonstop, that's
Yeah.
really unhealthy for me mentally, emotionally, and creatively, because I find that stress and exhaustion kill creativity. They just kill it.
They do.
They do.
100%.
They kill it. And
Mm,
there is a point where it's almost like I become kind of dulled. Like what I'll start just
yeah.
falling back on what's easy and what I know because I'm exhausted and I can't think and I'm not developing my ideas. So
Yeah.
super important. That's the only way I know how to balance it is I have learned to identify what's important to me and what I need creatively, physically to be able to continue to pour out a lot of energy.
That is such an amazing answer. I mean, that really resonates for me.
Mm.
I like, oh man. I mean, as we both said, it's like, starting your own gig is the hardest thing in the world.
It is.
But I think for me, when I hear that, it's like, yeah, that's so true. I mean, for me, like I consider myself an extremely creative person, even though I'm dealing in like the business side of things. But it's
Yeah.
like but again, it's that idea of like you're giving so many of your ideas and your thoughts, and you do that constantly, and it's enriching and it's wonderful, and you love doing it,
Mm-hmm.
but you don't realize how much it saps your energy
Yes.
until you're
Yeah.
like, as you say, going through the motions, and then you realize
Yeah.
that your passion's gone, and then you're like,
Yeah.
crap, like I need to.
Yeah.
Ooh. But it's so hard though sometimes, because I think for me, I feel the pull. I don't know if you feel this way, but you feel the pull between the commercial side. Like I need to like get this
Mm-hmm.
work done. I need to
Mm-hmm.
like make sure we
Mm-hmm.
bill this month. We need to do
Yep.
this.
Yep.
No, but also while being basically flatlining because you're exhausted. And it's
Yes.
like finding that balance, I think is like, I want to say like a Tetris board. You're trying to find that way of like making sure that all the pieces fit together.
It can be really tricky. If I have a really difficult deadline, that's going to require a lot of my focus, and I know the time for myself is going to be minimal.
Mm.
Structuring my time is super important.
Mm.
Even if it's as simple as if I'm exhausted and I know that there are certain tasks that I can kind of do on autopilot, and it
Mm.
just takes a little bit of the stress and pressure off.
Mm.
Just taking pressure and stress off sometimes is enough to kind of give me a little bit of a boost. But just
Mm.
kind of over time, I've learned how to structure my day, when I'm the most productive, when I'm the least productive, forcing myself to take breaks. Even if I have to work
Mm.
later, a 10-minute break can make a
Mm.
huge difference. And I will get in that mindset of like, I can't stop. I've got to get this done.
Yeah.
This deadline is in 3 hours. I'm not going to hit it. And
Yeah.
I get into this kind of mental, I don't know, pattern that's not healthy. And I've
Mm.
learned if I start to ramp up like that, it means stop, go outside, take 10 minutes, breathe,
Yeah.
then
Yeah.
come back in. Because I'm no good to anybody. If I'm in that, if my mind is churning like that, it's not
Yeah.
good. And
Yeah.
everybody's different, but identifying your own triggers and
Mm.
and knowing when certain things show up in certain ways, it's time to stop and just
Yeah.
breathe. The
Yeah.
work will be there.
Yeah. There's something to be said about that 10-minute walk outside. I mean,
Huge.
huge. You can like be in the biggest pit of like anxiety and freaking out, and then you just go outside and for 10 minutes, and then you're
Yeah.
like, oh, actually I feel kind of normal again. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I
Like,
can get back to it.
yeah, like something as simple as I have a long driveway, so I'll just walk to the mailbox,
Yeah.
and I've made it now part of my ritual of like, about 1 o'clock, I just get my butt out of the seat, I check the mail. But
Yeah.
just even that just resets everything. It's the sun,
Yeah.
it's, where I live, there are a bunch of trees, just breathing
Yeah.
air, all of that.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, marvelous. Um, so for you, what does success look like? I ask everyone this question, and it's always really interesting
Oh,
the answers that people send or say, because I think it really varies, but there's always a theme.
Oh boy, this is a hard question. There's different kinds of success for me.
Mm.
Because I run my own business, so there are very specific metrics for business success,
Sure.
making certain money at certain quarter
Yeah.
goals and
Yeah.
um
Practicalities of it.
practicalities, right? So there's a practical success. So for me, what that would look like would be um having a year in advance of income, so if the world fell apart, I would be okay. That would be
Yeah.
financial success for me.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I also really see success as something very personal for me and very specific
Mm.
goals that are going to be different. So for me personally, success would look like very balanced life,
Mm.
not working more than 9 hours a day,
Mm.
taking the weekends off, and doing work that feels like it's creating some kind of positive impact in the world instead of um, just creating things that have no influence at all.
Mm.
And not that I'm opposed to creating those things, but if I could move into a place where that was my focus, that would be success.
What a wonderful answer. That's great. Wow. Yeah. Well, I mean, we've been going for a little while, so I'll wrap this up. But I was thinking, as I mentioned, we have our little quick fire questions, which
Oh,
we
yeah.
ask everybody just for fun.
Okay.
I tend to ask, I think, some of the same ones because I just think they're interesting. But I'm gonna go for it. Let's see,
Okay.
what do we got here? We got if your design studio or your
Hmm.
business had a
Hmm.
mascot, what would it be and why?
Oh, uh, let's see. Design studio mascot, what would it be? I think it would be a yellow unicorn. And
And
why?
say more about that. Why?
Well, okay, I'll do this quickly. There's two reasons. One, um, okay, I just love mythology and myth, and I love the idea of magic.
Yeah.
Two, I was in a thrift store one day and I found this golden 1950s giant unicorn randomly, and I was
Oh
in a
my
really
gosh.
bad place. And then um, it just sort of became this symbol for me of that magic still exists. So that's why.
Amazing. Oh,
Yeah.
now that's an answer. Wow. That's fantastic. What's your most favorite thing about your job?
Oh, most favorite thing? Mm, I love being creative with people. I just love it.
Hmm.
I love it.
From a collaborative point of view,
Hmm.
you mean?
I just like
Mm,
I like like I could work by myself forever. It would be really
sure.
easy as an introvert to just be a hermit.
Yeah.
Um, it would, but there is something
Yeah.
special about the collaborative process. I really
Mm,
like it.
yeah. That's really true. And what's the most unusual source of inspiration you've ever had for a project?
Oh my God. Hmm. Thinking about this. Wow. I'm going through like this Rolodex. Most unusual. I think maybe, hmm, I think the most unusual probably was um, I had a client where they just wanted me to make the most messed up thing I could possibly make. Like they wanted something that was the most bizarre, ugly, horrible. They were really trying to do sort of an anti marketing campaign.
Yeah.
Um,
Turn people
s-
off, basically.
yeah, like just it was like take everything that would be anti-design, anti beauty, anti what I would normally do, and create a campaign from it. That was by far the weirdest thing I've ever done because
Wow.
it was the flip. It was the flip. All the research was the opposite. Hmm. Or no
Was it
research.
successful? Oh no, yeah,
Yeah,
there was no research.
it was really successful. Because people were like, "What
Wow.
the hell is that?"
Yeah, exactly. I can imagine it because it's just, oh, I love it. I love it. That's an amazing answer.
Anti-design. Yeah.
Anti-design. Undesign.
Undesign.
Undesign. Oh, amazing. Well, listen, Heather, this has been so fun. As always, you're so great to talk to.
Oh,
If
thank
people
you.
want to find your work, where can they locate you? Where's your deets?
My business is called Cramanti.com. It's CRAHMANTI. I am all over the socials. You can also just search Heather Crank. I just come right up,
Yeah.
last name Crank, easy.
Yeah.
I'm on Twitter. I'm on Instagram. I'm on LinkedIn, or actually X. Excuse me, X. I'm on
Yeah.
Instagram. I'm on TikTok. I'm everywhere.
You're everywhere. So people can find you. It's
Yeah.
also, because we're connected on LinkedIn, and I always love checking LinkedIn in the mornings, and I see like what you like. This is my morning meditation. It's always really interesting to kind of be like, this is where she's at today. It's so great.
Yeah.
It's
Thank you.
it's wonderful.
Thank you.
Well, listen, thank you so much for coming on, as always.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, it's been so great. So, yeah, thank you, and we'll speak soon, I'm sure.
Yes, thank you so much. I really appreciate this. It's nice to be in the spotlight with you. I really appreciate you taking the time.
My pleasure. It's been such a delight. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Thanks again to Heather for talking with me. It was such an interesting conversation, and what the key takeaway for me really was that AI can, like anything that is foreign or new, can be viewed with suspicion or worry, but in pretty much all cases, what makes it different is that you can look a bit deeper and see what possibilities are actually there instead of being afraid of it. Change is the only constant, so embracing it is the pathway to the future, lest we be left behind. Once again, if you like this episode, please like and subscribe, share with a friend, all those sort of things, and episodes drop every other Tuesday. Until then, be well. Understories was produced by Claude Fields and Kieran Fowler, the music is by Avez, and the branding is by Joe Jones. See you in a couple weeks.